I spent 2 hours this morning trying to find this post that you made years ago, and I couldn't find it.
Oh no.
It was a photo of you like goth and like kind of all makeup, and I remember the post saying back then you were into white zins, into DJing, more like going out rather than wine. And I want to know a little bit about where you came from. That started all the way up into Wine Folly, and then obviously Folly Inc. now.
Yeah. I'm a musician by trade. I studied music composition and technology in school, whatever technology means back when I got a degree in 2005. That's an old degree. But I studied basically music production, composition, technology, and I also got a side degree in fine art because I was like, I'm never going to get a real job in music. There's so few and far between. And so I wanted to be a rock star. That was my goal. I was like, I'm on track. And so I was producing music and writing music, doing a lot of time-based editing in digital audio workstations and that kind of stuff. And I was part of a laptop performance crew. This was back in 2002 and 2003 when being on a laptop in front of an audience, they're like, where's your instruments? So we were definitely like pushing the genre a bit. I did electro pop. That was kind of the music genre that I was interested in at the time. And yeah, when I turned 21, I was in school and I was living in my art studio, which at Cal Arts was like, there's no bathroom. You go down the hall. It's like a bathroom in the hall. So I would like bring my 409 and clean the toilet seat before I'd use it because it was rough. And my dad got me a wine subscription when I turned 21. So we had other story. There was one shower that all the studios shared in the entire building. Just one shower. So that got like a really good 409 treatment whenever I went in. I felt like I was keeping the building clean. That was my job as a girl living in her studio for all these.
I'm sure there were definitely no spare hairs in that shower.
One shower. Okay, so this is where I was. And so my dad sends me this wine subscription. I got 2 bottles a month. It was from K&L Wine Merchants. And those were literally the nicest, most high-quality things I put in my mouth the entire month. So
wait, but I'm interrupting you for 1 second, so hold your place. Your dad sent you a wine subscription at K&L, so your dad was drinking wine. Like, he knew about wine, right?
He was, like, kind of curious about wine. Yeah, totally. Totally. He was curious. My family, it's because my family in Tennessee, of all places in the world, like the outback of Tennessee, my grandfather was into wine. So I think because my grandfather was kind of into wine, I went to a cellar years later after he passed, and I found a bottle of Chateau Haut-Brion that my grandfather bought that he'd cellared for, I don't know, 20, 30 years or whatever. So my grandmother let me pop it. It was really good. It was my first growth that I ever tasted. Yeah. Yeah, so it was crazy. But my dad wasn't like buying super fancy wines. He was super pragmatic. And K&L was one of the first places you could buy wines online safely and not have your credit card information stolen. And so he was buying wine from them, and that's how he got me the wine subscription. And he paid for it for like 4 years. My dad's awesome.
First of all, Dad sounds awesome.
He's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome.
He's like, if you're going to drink.
No, that's the best thing about wine. It's like the culture of teaching people how to drink responsibly, right?
Yeah.
That's, what the Greeks installed, what they taught the Romans, et cetera, and so. But let's go back to you. After that wine subscription, you're still kind of an art student.
Yeah, I was an art student.
The light bulb goes off, or what? I don't even know the story, and I've known you for a long time.
I met a boy who's, almost 21 years ago now. He's my husband now. But I met a boy. It was like a rebound relationship. I dated this guy in the same program as me, and he was good, but he was really argumentative, and we didn't get along, and I don't know why I stuck around so long, but eventually we broke up, and I was like, all right, I'm free. I'm going to go be a real art school girl and, like, meet a bunch of cool guys and have relationships and do what our other art school girls were doing. And I met this dude, and it was supposed to be a rebound relationship, and he just didn't let me go. And he challenged everything that I thought about with like art and culture and all this stuff, but he was very intelligent. And we would drink these bottles of wine together. And I remember this time we were smelling wine and I couldn't name the flavors. Like usually we'd try to like, oh, I smell raspberries or whatever. And he's like, this smells like black olives. And I smelled it and I was like, holy shit, it does. It smells like black olives. So he was kind of like the way that I got into really appreciating wine was like sitting down, opening a bottle, sharing the wine with him. And then we got the black olive wine. And that was the wine that broke me and got me into wine because I was like, okay, I need more of the black olive wine. And I tried to buy it and the vintage changed. It no longer tasted the same. And I thought there was something wrong with me. And there was no information online about vintage variation or anything like that. So I was like so confused. And they would send these like things with K&L would like send their like catalog of wines and it would just say like the name of the wine and the price. And you're like, does that mean it's good? Like, like.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I remember those days, but go ahead.
So yeah, it was crazy. So it was just, anyway. That's how I got into wine, was like a mysterious path of trying to figure out how to buy more of what I liked. And that ultimately led to me pursuing my sommelier with Court of Masters and starting Wine Folly in 2011. It was registered as a business, I think, in October 2011, technically. Although we started it before that, but that's a story for another time.
Justin, your that's the co-founder,
yeah, Justin,
right?
my husband, then boyfriend, Justin, co-founded Wine Folly with me back in 2011, along with another dude named Chad Wasser, who now is a CEO of an art firm because he is also an art geek. So yeah, Wine Folly started by a bunch of geeky, like nerdy art people.
I know YouTube's not your main thing, but I was at a YouTube event last week with a bunch of creators, and one guy was talking to me. He said, "You know what? All YouTubers, we're just like geeks. We're like real geeks, like cameras, like, you know, got to get the thumbnail right, got to get this right, got to get the storytelling right."
Yeah, dude.
I mean, geeks are what changed the world, though. Geeks are who changed the world.
Yeah, what's happening on YouTube right now is so cool. I'm so jealous that you went to a whole thing. I did get the $100,000
I know.
thing that was the follower like thing in the mail.
You have your silver play button? Did you get your play button?
Yeah, I got something in the mail. I was like, what the heck is this? And it was from YouTube, and they're like, congratulations. Good luck on 1 million. I was like, ah! That's
yeah, I'm jealous.
That's 10x, buddy.
Actually, you know that there's less than I think 0.5% of channels on YouTube have 100,000 subscribers.
Well, thank you, and please support this channel as well.
Yeah.
If you're watching this, if you know me.
Thank you. What was the black olive wine? What was that?
Yeah,
do you remember?
2005 Côte de Rhône. It was like a $15 bottle of wine. It wasn't fancy, but 2005 was an excellent vintage, right?
Yes.
It was a fruity, ripe,
you know,
forward, plush vintage. A great vintage to get into French wine with, or French red wine with specifically for those reasons. And when the 2006s rolled around, they were way more herbal, and I was like not ready to drink herbs yet. I was okay with black olives, not okay with herbs. My palate hadn't quite gotten there yet.
It's my most viewed long video is actually a blind tasting of Côte de Rhône.
Really?
Yeah, and it's a wine that I recommend to so many people. Like you said, you're in college, right? You can still afford Côte de Rhône, especially if you live in Europe. You can get Côte de Rhône for like $2.
Oh, yeah.
But in America, you can get a good Côte de Rhône at a local shop for $12, right?
Yeah, and if you're looking for that next vintage that's going to change everyone in France right now, and buy as much of it as you can, get the 2020 vintage from Côte de Rhône. It's got that same sort of plush, welcoming, fruity style. It reminds me of the 2005s a bit. It's nice. It's got a little better bounce. I think it'll age a little bit longer, but yeah, it's good stuff.
On a random Wednesday night, what's Madeline opening?
Random Wednesday night. Anything from a cheap bottle of cava to some weird, wacky $200 bottle of Merlot someone sends me to taste for whatever reason. That's my Wednesday night. You
don't care about special occasion wines. You'll open anything, anytime, anywhere, any place, right?
Anytime, any place. I don't care. And it could be because I've had some kind of weird tragedies happen around people's birthdays and important events that I've kind of like Any day that's an unbirthday is a perfectly good reason to have excellent or verifiably cheap.
Share one of those stories when you say one of those accidents.
Oh gosh, I mean they're kind of tragic, but my husband's dad passed away on his birthday. And so it was like one of those things where we were like, birthdays are kind of not fun anymore. And, oh, by the way, I was born on tax day. So my birthday sucks. That's what I mean by tragedy. So, and when you work in the restaurant industry, every day that's a celebration day for everyone else. It's New Year's Eve, it's Valentine's Day. Those are the days that you work and make good money. So all holidays have sort of been written off as important events for me, and it's kind of freed me up from this idea that I have to be having a good time when everybody else is. I can have a good time on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. Why not?
A lot of people that are more casual drinkers or not as serious or not into it full time kind of put it up on a pedestal, whereas people that have been in it for a long time kind of have the approach that you do, or maybe I do, that it's okay anytime to open that special bottle, right? You don't have to wait for that one special occasion. Yeah.
Or that you can make a Tuesday night a special occasion. I think that's kind of how I think about it. Like, why you got a 1963 bottle of port? Well, it's just getting older every day. Now's the time to drink it. Let's make a special occasion out of right now to enjoy it. It's this kind of live in the moment that you get into. Yeah, it's mindful. I say that and I'm laughing, but it's kind of mindful.
Let's say somebody comes to you that's, doesn't know a ton about wine. Let's says, Madeline, give me 5 whites and 5 red wines that I should taste so I can understand and learn more about wine. What are they?
Okay, 5 reds. Pinot Noir, Cabernet Franc, Petit Syrah or Malbec if you can't find it, Zinfandel, and maybe Grenache. Those, you got to try those to know the depth and breadth that red wines have to offer. And then white wines, it would be Oak Chardonnay.
Yummy.
Yeah, let's do it. Something high acid, maybe a Riesling or a Sirtico.
Yeah.
Something richer, greener, Sauvignon Blanc or Gruner Veltliner. Aromatic Muscatel, like a dry Muscatel, or a dry Gewürztraminer, and something orange.
Ooh.
Those would be the 5 whites that you should try.
I'm going to pick at you a little bit. Why did you pick Petit Syrah?
Oh, gosh.
For reds.
Because if you're a beginner, there's no wine that will love you more than Petit Syrah or Malbec. Like, I talk to beginners all the time, and they just want to find a wine that's not hard to drink. They want to find a wine that is yummy to drink, and they can consistently get yumminess for a good price. And Petit Syrah nails it. And so does Malbec, honestly. And Monastrell. Those would be my 3 in that grouping.
Oh, I absolutely. It's so funny with pets, as they call it out there in California, because they're such old vine material. I always recommend it as getting something like old vine, high quality, has some complexities, is fruity and delicious. But I have to say, like, Petit Syrah can always be impressive, a good one at first, but I can't drink a whole bottle of that. It's just too much. It's just too much for me.
That's because I don't know what happened to your palate. I used to be able to drink a bottle and more of a Petit Syrah, but I agree with you. My palate's changed too. It's like I'm like a little old, delicate old lady palate now.
I talk about this on the channel. A lot of people, you'll see in the comments, people ask about that as their palates change. How has yours changed? I know mine's changed tremendously since I started in wine.
I once wrote an article about how your palates change, and I thought about it a lot, and it's like I almost did a full circle. Like I started at Riesling, and then I ended at Riesling. But along the way, it was like bold reds, more like interesting herbal red wines. At some point, I switched to white wines only. Then I was just drinking high-acid sparkling or high-acid whites. And then I found my way back to sweet Riesling, and I was like, this is perfect. you know, so I don't know if you go away, but you definitely go out and maybe you come back. I don't know. I can still drink, like, I can drink the weirdest red wine and love the crap out of it. Something with super high tannins, real weird aromatics, complexity, like wintergreen on the nose, and I'm just like, yeah, this is awesome. But I'm not drinking a lot of those sweeter, fruitier reds that I used to drink like a brick ton of when I was getting into wine. And I moved away. It's almost like it's too much. Like you're describing with Petit Syrah, it's just too much. Like, it's like drinking barbecue sauce.
That is actually because it can be so sweet. Not it's a dry wine, but the fruit can be so sweet and intense.
Yeah.
And I hear you. Like, it's so funny. Obviously, you know, you're in the media game. Like, what's going to get most clicks, most views? What people want to read? Mostly Bordeaux or red wines. But I personally want to taste more whites and sweets. I actually love the world's great sweet wines and champagne. And champagne. I don't think I'll ever get sick of champagne.
I'm trying to like other sparkling wines besides champagne because like my wallet is not pleased. Whenever I'm like, oh, I'll just buy this champagne. It's like, you shouldn't have done that. You know, I get the credit card bill at the end of the month. So like, yeah, drink cheaper but well-made sparkling wines instead.
That's where you said cheaper cava, like on a random Wednesday night, right?
Delicious.
When I was working in my past life as a chiropractor, you know, I was drinking champagne often, and then started working wine. I was not drinking it. So until this last year, for some reason, I've been getting tons of champagnes. Not tons. I'm getting more champagne samples. I'm like, oh, thank goodness.
You're so lucky. Just,
thank goodness I'm making it.
You know it's going to be the saddest, best day of your life when you're dumping champagne down the drain.
Oh, well, Corvin sends me gear, and they just sent me a bunch of sparkling tops.
Yes.
So I'm pretty pumped.
No
people
waste.
Are like, yeah, people are like, what's leftover champagne? You know, they don't understand when you're tasting a ton. You have so much in front of you. That's different. We'll get back to Madeline in a second, but I want to tell you about something that's exciting. I've launched channel memberships, and there are some great perks in the second tier, the Grand Reserve tier. I'm going to be doing a monthly live tasting hangout on YouTube. This is for Grand Reserve members only. You'll be able to call in, come on screen with me, discuss whatever you're tasting as well, ask some questions, give your thoughts. The first couple YouTube live hangout tastings will be open to the public as I get the word out, but only those on the Grand Reserve tier will have the option of calling in and being on screen to ask a live question. In the future, these live hangouts will be limited just to Grand Reserve channel members. In addition to that, this is the first video podcast that I've launched. There'll be more in the future. They will be done mostly as YouTube lives. Channel members in the Grand Reserve tier will have the option to come on screen and ask myself or the guests some questions or leave some of their comments. Just click the join button if you want to check it out. I'll also pin it in the top comment. Thanks a lot, and let's get back to the podcast. You started Wine Folly. I was following you back then. Right when you started, I actually just had started my chiropractic career.
Wow.
Overseas before. But what, you know, we're in different timelines, but as you kind of go along in this industry, what kind of challenges did you see being a woman, especially a young woman in the industry? I know the challenges of being a young person in this industry.
I mean, I can't imagine your challenges as being a non-white person are probably pretty enormous too. I can just remember being a younger woman, trying to advise people wines to buy, and they'll be like, you haven't tasted enough. And I'm like, well, you know, I've tasted thousands of bottles at this point, but okay. Like, it was kind of like, so when I worked as a sommelier, it was awkward. They'd be like, you're too young to be a sommelier. And you're not like, ideally, like the model that I wish I were was like an old French man. Like, that was like the perfect way to look and be to sell a lot of wine at the restaurant, is if you were like an old guy with like a pretty good accent, you could just like walk in and just sell. And I'm sitting there trying to get bottles on the table, and they're like, we'll just get a cocktail. And I'm just like, no, come on. We could do better than that. So that was a bummer. So was it just the peers in the wine community. It was also customers that didn't think that here's someone who could potentially get you into a good bottle of wine that you're really going to enjoy. They didn't trust the source. And then then another thing happened where I started to get known about, and I would do this stuff and I'd try to share it on like Reddit or what were
Oh God, the worst place. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
To share wine content.
That's if you try to put yourself on Reddit, just be prepared to get a good roasting. I remember someone roasted us so hard, and again, my husband's a geek, so he like found this person's profile through metadata on their photo that they had uploaded.
Wow.
And we were able to figure out who they were and where they lived. And I remember like looking at this person, this moderator on the R Wine, and being like, you know what? They're just jealous. Like it was one of those moments where I was like, haters are gonna hate. It's gonna happen. I can't feel threatened by this person anymore. I should just try to make good stuff and not really worry about the hate as much. Although I will admit it took me years and years of reading negative comments to finally like build a thicker skin. And I think it's not happening on so many other channels, but like YouTube has that same grit that it had for me back in the day on my blog or on Reddit or in those places, that level of like just fierce combative comebacks that happen. So if you're on YouTube and like it's very real.
I find though on YouTube, like, because people spend time with you, so they're invested in your relationship, not talking about you, any creator. So you're like true fans, you don't even have to respond because they defend you.
Yeah,
like
that's
you're true. To defend in the comments.
Yeah,
like crazy.
That started to happen on our blogs too, as people would come back and they'll be like, well, you know, blah, blah, blah. Reading the negative comments is helpful too if they actually have critical feedback, like this is inaccurate, like blah, blah, blah. It can help to lead you to write better content in the future. So I still look at negative content or critical feedback for those pieces of like helpful ways for, hey, maybe I missed something. And you know, I call it turning that frown upside down. This one guy, I remember him leaving this really long, brutal critical feedback on one of my articles on, I think it was Portugal or Spain. And I like looked the guy up and found out more about him, responded politely and thanks so much for the feedback. And then he was like overjoyed that I responded, and I was like, hey, we'll look at doing an article update. And I got his email, and he's like, hey, whenever you need help for Spanish content, I'd love to help you edit it to make sure it goes out great, because you know it's important that it's correct. So I think there's some people out there that just want things to be right on the internet, and they're your allies if you acknowledge them. So that was one of the lessons for me too, is like amongst the negativity, there are some people who actually just care and are trying to do the right thing, and they could potentially be a friend instead of an enemy.
It's hard to tell connotation on the internet, and sometimes people are just surprised that you respond. And it's almost like when you confront somebody in real life, if they're nasty, then they kind of shaken out of it, and then like they try to be apologetic, so to speak. It's funny that you say all that stuff, because I was just on a call with a real famous psychologist. It was a YouTube call, like YouTube creators. Oh, wow. And he was talking about, us getting past the vanity metrics, all this type of stuff, negative comments. And I was like, yeah, but I was like, have you found anybody that you work with to actually that to be the case for them to not worry about that or be? And he said, no, we're all human beings. So that was really nice to hear from somebody that I respected, because it was a pretty well-known psychologist. It's funny. The internet's a funny place out there, and wine is so funny, right? Because in the industry, as you should probably see, everybody wants to show you how much they know, right? Even if they might be wrong, so to speak.
Yeah, everyone wants to. Yeah, prove that they are at your level or maybe even above it potentially.
And I know that because I was there when I first started. I wanted to prove I knew so much, and I've tasted all these like fancy. When I started out, I thought just because I'd tasted some real expensive, nice wines and I knew something about wine, And then when I started there's a difference between like I taste with a group of collectors every single month. Their knowledge is what they buy and what they've tasted, but kind of understanding wine is, it's funny. Wine's simple because it's just fermented grape juice, but in essence, it's super complicated. That's why it's so intimidating, right?
Yeah. You know, Dr. Andy Waterhouse is I mean, he's retired now, but he's a professor of viticulture and enology at UC Davis. And I remember him and this guy from Cornell, they're just putting out a new book called Understanding Wine Chemistry. And I was kind of trying to understand, like I was writing the foreword of the book, and I was trying to ask them about what makes chemistry and wine different than what a chemist knows. And he's like, well, it's because the reactions, instead of happening at a millisecond, are happening over this extended period of time, like years and or decades. And it changes that the rate at which the chemical reaction occurs changes how the result of the chemical reaction and all the other things around it. So when you look at how wine changes and ages or ferments to begin with, you're looking at this like really long drawn out process, and lots of other things can happen that are really hard to make sense of. And I swear to you, every single day I learn, if I'm actually paying attention, I learn something new about wine. And I've been at it for 15 years. I learned something, and I thought I knew a thing or two about wine. I thought I was so confident. I just continually learn new things every day. So I'm in that phase where I'm like, the more you know, the more you know you don't know.
The more you don't know. What you've been in it. You're one of the OG kind of somebody that made wine a little bit more easy to understand. Where do you see, and you've been doing at it for a long time, there's still holes. Obviously, the wine industry's failed to generate new customers. I mean, that's the big crisis point that a lot of people talk about. You're in it. You're dealing with people on a daily basis through all your points of contact, all your content. Where do you see holes in terms of what wine education has gotten wrong?
Well, there's a couple of things that I could say would be holes in what wine education has got wrong, but it's maybe not wine education that's the issue, it's the wine industry at large, and it's keeping up at the rate and style in which people are communicating. So by that I mean like using the platforms that people are using to learn, like YouTube, in the way that people like to absorb YouTube content, or on TikTok or whatever. And wine has always been really slow to keep up with the way the media operates. Like, media is communication ultimately. So the way that we're talking, wine is somewhere back here talking in this old school kind of a way, and we're up here talking in this new school kind of way. So wine's always a little bit behind the pace at which people communicate in the channel or genre, style, technique, methodology, whatever you want to call it. I think that's what I did that was different. I was communicating about wine at the rate at which people were talking in media at the time. Infographics were new in 2011. I was using infographics. So if anyone is trying to get ahead with communication about wine, they should be using the modern methodologies of communication, which is now media and often video media, short form video, that kind of a thing. So that's one of the issues that wine has. And then the other issue that I think wine has is it likes to accelerate really quickly into the good shit and ignore the cheap shit. So like there's actually a lot of really good cheap wines, some of them crafted and some of them naturally crafted, if you will, that people are drinking on a regular basis, these like onboarding wines. I tried Stella Rosa for the first time. The other day. It's like a $6 or $7 bottle of wine, and I was shocked. The taste that was coming out of that wine and what people are expecting wine to taste like. How do you move from Stella Rosa into these more, that's definitely a crafted wine. How do you move into these more real wines? What are people expecting that flavor to be? And so that's like one of the things that I think the wine industry is afraid of. They're trying too hard to be the best and not trying hard to be like good enough at the base. So there's like no onboarding, like price wise, like you can't, like how do you get an oak Chardonnay for a cheap price? Even if you're using like tea bags of oak chips or whatever, maybe that's what we should be doing. It's a little bit more ecologically smart thing to do, and maybe that's okay, and we can eventually onboard into oak barreled Chardonnay for $40 a bottle, because that's how much it would have to cost to get that kind of quality, right? So I'm like, there's like a little bit of that problem, and maybe I'm not describing this right, but like it feels to me like we're leaving the base at the base, and we're not bringing people steps in to get to the higher level stuff as much.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, or let's see what your opinion on this. I think you identified in wine, for example, what gets attention is the cheap supermarket stuff or the real expensive stuff that people like really can't afford. And isn't that the same of just life in general? There's like no middle class. You're either going towards the top or the bottom, or it's just a race to the bottom. So maybe it's inherently not a wine thing, but wine's a very archaic
you're totally
business.
Right.
Wine's a very archaic business. It's a very, the way that everything is done and communicated. But that really got me thinking. I was like, because I'm a geek, I'm passionate about that stuff in between. The best value for money are these quirky, weird wines or weird varieties from around the world. But that's really not, people usually want to know what can I get for the lowest price possible that tastes pretty good, or I want to look or aspire to drink a first growth Bordeaux or a Latache or an Echezot or something like that.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It's like every business. It's just not clickbait.
What since you're in this, you're the best person to ask. I have a acquaintance, a professional friend, maybe acquaintance. Friend is a strong word. Robert Joseph, he's a British wine writer, now a consultant, and he wrote an article a little while ago that said, wine doesn't need more education, it needs more seducers.
I mean, he's right. I don't sell education. I sell pathways into getting into wine, to geeking out, to becoming passionate, and that's what separates my work, my wine educational work, from every other wine educator. Is I'm not actually trying to give you the nuts and bolts. I'm trying to give you a delicious taco of wine information so that you want to just gobble the whole thing down. So yeah, we don't need more education, we need more seduction. I think that's happening already. Like, already there's so many amazing heroes on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube that are sharing this, like, maybe they are making us ask a bunch of questions about wine. That's where we need the education. But they're making us curious, and we do need that. These, like, heroes making us curious about wine. The next Anthony Bourdain, but for the wine. You know, someone to make us, like, stop for a minute and be like, oh my God, there's something there. Food isn't just something I poop out. It's like a fucking thing.
I've always felt like, from when I started, because I was watching YouTube in the mid-2000s I was fascinated with the platform, and I've always thought that if somebody really can make it big on YouTube and wine, they can become very influential, really, really powerful, because not so many people that are into wine are into wine. They don't know about production or making beautiful content or photography or direct art direction, like something you were doing from the beginning. I had to learn as I came, like I learned all the video skills and everything as I came along.
Oh yeah, I learned it too. I mean, I knew a couple of things about time-based editing, but yeah, we're always learning as we go. That's the best way.
Since you want to get people into drinking wine, you started a wine club, which I think is a fascinating concept. For somebody that's an educator, can you tell me a little bit about why you want to do it, what it's all about?
You're going to laugh. When we started Wine Folly, it was supposed to be a wine club. So,
really?
Yeah, so here's the vision was this. We're going to go travel around the world. We're going to get these wines together. We're going to shoot video on site. And every single month, you're going to get bottles with videos that share the wine world to you in the mail. And that's how it started in 2011. We were just shipping bottles out of my friend Chad's house. He literally had a liquor license application on his window in his house in his nice little neighborhood in Seattle. And that went off real well. It didn't go off well at all. It was like nobody knew about YouTube. Like we were maybe a little too early. If you might,
because you didn't have a name. You didn't have a name in the biz. Like people are like, oh, why should I listen to you, right?
Well, yeah, we were definitely fresh. So in order to market, I started making these infographics, and we eventually pivoted into a media company. So I had the opportunity to start this club again, and I was like, well, now is definitely the time to do a media education-focused wine club where if only I had, like I keep remembering that experience at 21, getting bottles of wine in the mail and like looking at the label and trying to figure out what the wine was. And if only there was like some kind of content that went along with this bottle that could help me like onboard me into the wine world and like taste me in all these different styles. And so I could be expanding my palate while I'm drinking delicious wines and learning about wine at the same time. So we launched that concept more officially, gosh, maybe almost 2 years ago with this Wine Folly Club. And it's been going really, really well. Like we have videos for every single wine. There's an incredible amount of detail on the wines. We try to get all the facts and data. So if you're like a numbers geek and you want to like nerd out about a wine, you can look up the information. We get as much as the information as we can from the producer. So it's for somebody who's a beginner or like wine interested, you can either just get the wines and enjoy them because they're good, or you can get the wines and enjoy them alongside of an educational experience. By the way, this is the Gary Vaynerchuk era of Wine Library TV, and we were watching him on Hulu when it was one of the shows you could watch on Hulu was Gary Vaynerchuk, and we were just like, whoa, my God, this needs to be a wine club. Like Gary V plus wine, wouldn't that be great? Because we just always wanted to taste along with Gary V, but we couldn't. He would just get random wines in and taste them, every day. And yeah, so when he went away and he left wine, for me, it left this huge vacuum of what the wine world needed, and I felt like that's what we could fill. So that's why we have a wine club. It's weird to say it's inspired by Gary Vaynerchuk, but it kind of was, like early Gary V, by the way, mind you. That was the era that he was running Wine Library with his family or whatever and trying to grow that business. So pretty cool backstory.
No, it's not funny at all because that's the impetus of my channel. That's why I wanted. That's why.
Really?
I read his books. Yeah, after he started to transition out, like I watched every episode of Wine Library TV. I actually did a reaction video to the best Wine Library TV moments going back.
Oh my God,
I enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed doing it. It didn't have tons and tons of views, but I enjoyed doing it. So I like how your eyes lit up though. So it's something that you're actually super passionate about. Some people just kind of do it, but you. And I got the first pack of wines, which I'm about to review, and they're pretty geek. Some of them are pretty geeky things. They're not so expensive, but should be delicious, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I think shipped, like if you buy a 4-bottle pack, like let's say you want all red wines, you get a 4-bottle pack, it's $100. So that's about the retail prices of those wines. So it's like decent, but like not super fancy. So the idea was that it was approachable price-wise so that like anyone who has enough money to get 4 bottles of wine a month could essentially afford the wine club. So it's purpose-built to be as pragmatic as possible.
Anybody that does this for as long as you've been doing it, I mean, I've almost been doing it as long as you, but
yeah, you have.
I haven't reached the level of clout and success yet. But I'm on my.
Don't say that.
But
you've written a book. I've seen your book. You had a book on Croatia, right?
I wrote 3 wine books actually, but the Croatian one was.
Even more than
but
me.
I'm done with. I self-published. I'm done with books. But obviously, there has to be a love for this to keep going on because it's not the highest margin, the biggest earning profession by far.
No,
so what?
Yeah, and selling wine, actually the wine club is like our lowest margin product. It's terrible.
It's so low wine. People don't understand how low margin wine is. What keeps you all lit up and passionate? Because you have to have a lot of passion about wine to keep going.
I spend time, because like you have to be like, well, is it because I'm an alcoholic or is there something there? And I think there's something there because I don't actually drink that much. I drink maybe like a glass of wine a night on the regular, and if I'm overdoing it, I drink like 3 glasses of wine, and I usually regret it the next day. So I'm not like alcoholic status, at least not at this point. I maybe was more of a binge drinker back in the day. But so that's not the reason why I love wine. The reason I love wine is because it's basically the highest tier agriculture. It's one of, there's many, of the highest tier agricultural products that we produce as a species. And food, what we eat and put through our bodies, is a representation of like who we are as a creature. Like it keeps us alive, it makes us do things. Wine's interesting because it has ethanol in it, so there's not really a lot of health benefits to it. That being said, when you learn about wine, it exposes you to all aspects of agriculture. It exposes you to geography, climates, challenges of growing things in a region, geopolitics, laws, regulations, like all of this stuff. And you find yourself learning about the world and learning about people and culture almost. And then the wine is just the sidecar to all this like incredible stuff that you learn about humans and people doing things on the earth. And you get, at the end of the day, then you get to drink and get drunk on, well, you get to taste and enjoy the like knowledge that you've just acquired. And I think that's why I like wine, is because it's like the cherry on the top of a really deep, complex, interesting world, which is our world, and it's very real, and I can attach a real thing. There's a real thing. This is really grape juice in here, and so I'm shaking my bottle. It's going to ruin the wine. So yeah, I think that's why I like wine, is because it is complex. It teaches us about ourselves and the world.
We share the exact same philosophy. I was a geology and chemistry major. I love to travel. I love history. And I love I love metaphysics. I love philosophy. So it ties all that together. You said everything perfectly. That's exactly how I feel. And also the drinking aspect. There's a lot of alcoholism in the industry. You see, it's kind of unspoken. I know wine has made, being in it professionally for so long, has made me less of a drinker too, as well. I taste 1,000 wines a year.
Wow.
And when I'm home, I don't want. I very seldom drink. I give away a lot of the bottles. If so, it's a glass, and I always know if I'm tasting wine, if I'm enjoying wine and it's beyond the tasting and looking phase, I stop myself.
That's good, yeah.
Because also I put on weight super easy. So when I started in wine, it was easy to get carried away. So, and then you're always eating when you're drinking and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, your amygdala fires off and it's like, you're hungry.
What do you see the next challenges for, not like Wine Folly You, but just wine communication in general? Because things have changed. You were the first to use infographics. The world's changing super, super fast. What are the challenges you see for yourself and wine?
Well, wine has a next big challenge, and alcohol in general has a challenge of like not going down the path that tobacco went down, the vilification of ethanol consumption. So that's certainly a challenge that's going to affect our industry. And I think that we can get through it, but we do really need to include wine as a part of a holistic unit, like a family unit, and acknowledge that it is something that has to be drunk in moderation. And one of the things that I think the cannabis culture did a really good job at was total, open, transparent information sharing of even all the chemistry. You can look up the chemistry, the terpene levels of any particular strain or any particular product of a cannabis product. And I think wine, because it's so grandfathered in, and the alcohol business is because it's so grandfathered in, we don't have to do that, right? We don't have to have a nutrition facts on the label or that kind of a thing. And I think there's an opportunity to re-examine alcohol. And when we do, if we were to put the nutrition facts on the label, I think wine would, would look suddenly a lot like a really good choice in the whole alcoholic beverage spectrum. So that's one of the challenges, I guess, that I think we're facing now, especially with like neo-prohibition kind of coming to the forefront with the WHO, getting involved in a reclassification or a marketing, sort of a negative marketing spin on ethanol-based beverage products, all beer, liquor, spirits, the whole gamut. So that's definitely something that the wine industry is facing, and I think it's easy to just want no change, but I think we need to like lean into what they're trying to talk about and come up with solutions to those types of problems instead of like, that's not happening. Like that seems like the bad thing to do. So that's probably the biggest thing that I see on the forefront. And the next thing is like, everybody's like, well, how do the young people get into wine and drinking and stuff? And it's like, well, you need to make an affordable product that's delicious. I don't know about you, but when I was 21, I had zero money. I had negative money. I was taking on loans. So affordable, delicious, quality products is actually challenging for a lot of producers to create. And the ones that have the opportunity to do the right thing, if they do the right thing now, they will lead the charge. So yeah, that's. So getting a new onboarding group is a good idea. And the kids are interested in saving the environment these days. So if you're not doing organic and beyond, you're kind of missing the boat when it comes to showing what a real quality wine product can be. So I think that's for me. I'm still pursuing this dream of making an online wine resource and making wine fun to learn about. And I feel like I'm in the Jiro dreams of sushi, like, this is my career, this is my life. How do I continue to make sushi for the rest of my life? And every time I do it, it's just a little bit better. So that's my personal problem, or whatever, that's my business's problem, is to exercise the Jiro dreams of sushi path and try to do the right thing and try to maintain a standard and try to like evolve, I don't know if you've ever watched this documentary, but Jiro Dreams of Sushi basically makes sushi for 80 years, and he's like a 3-star Michelin-rated sushi bar in Japan, and the fish changes over the 80 years that he makes sushi. The rice is different, like the eggs are different, like he's had to modify his end product and change his goals and expectation based on what he's seeing in the world. And I think that's something that's very relevant to people who are artists trying to create art and trying to express themselves. And I would say that for me, this is, as an artist, to me, writing and producing content about wine is my expression of art. It's what I have a passion to do, is to express the art of the thing, even though my art is not really like, ooh, something to look at. It's more informational art, if you will.
When I saw Sideways, that's when I decided I wanted to get into wine when I was in college. And I remember at first buying all these supermarket wines, and because what people don't know when they start drinking wine is all the wines in supermarkets, just a few companies with just different labels. I was like, why does this all taste the same? I don't understand that, right? It's hard. Gatekeeping in wine is a real thing to move your way up. Let me ask you one final question. Oh, funny thing is, last time I talked to you, a lot of people don't I think I mentioned this on my channel, but I applied at one time to be your chief content creator. So if people didn't realize that was long ago.
I wish we could have afforded you.
That
looked like such a cool opportunity. I remember bringing that to my business partner, and he's like, I don't know that we can do this right now, kind of a thing. God.
It's
how much regret do I have?
It's fine. It's so funny because I thought, I was like, man, if I go on board with this, I'd give up everything that I'm trying to do. I think all in the end it works out.
I'm glad you didn't.
But
I'm glad you didn't.
Why should people get into wine?
Why should they?
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you need to? Why should they? I think if you're drinking, if you already enjoy alcoholic beverages, wine could definitely be on your radar for a few reasons. One, health-wise, it is probably one of the better options to pick from. And people might say this or that about it, but looking at the stats and looking at actual studies, there's enough out there to be like, yeah, it doesn't have the same level of carbs. It's generally lower alcohol than, say, like a whiskey. And it's something that's kind of hard to drink, actually. You can't really drink it fast. I mean, maybe you can drink your champagnes fast, but like a dry red wine, like that's a sipper. So for getting into wine, if you like alcoholic beverages, it's going to help you slow down your moment to moment steps, getting like tasting, really thinking about things, getting into the mindfulness of alcohol consumption, but like more like you start looking at it differently. Like you start looking for more in your glass. And I think that's what's so cool about wine. Actually, a lot of beverages have this sort of questioning around it where you start drinking it and you're like, what is this? Where does it come from? Why is this? And wine definitely has that in spades. So that's maybe the best reason to start drinking wine is that, because it's interesting.
I would add on to that, and I know this is your floor, but everything you said is correct, but I think that the main point of wine is to keep people that you love or want to love at the table just a little bit longer. Because I think conversations just flow differently.
Oh, no kidding.
That's what the Greeks got it, right? Symposiums where everyone just got shitty on wine and then just shared ideas. That was what a Greek symposium was. They had it.
We gotta go back to the symposium era, like the original symposium idea. We're so stuck on being perfect because there's a lot of pressure out there with AI and robotics that like we're horribly flawed, and in order to be flawless, we have to be perfect. And I think that's folly, quite honestly. We're human. What makes us interesting is that we are full of error. And I think that's why it's called wine folly, quite honestly, is because this idea that you're falling into something and you're obsessed with it and it doesn't make any sense. And it's at the end of the day, it's just fermented grape juice. And that's actually what's interesting about it. And that's what holds us and keeps us together as a people, is like caring about one another and doing something together. Tasting wine, let's enjoy this bottle together. Hey, I'd love to drink a bottle of wine with you, kind of a thing. Yeah, you're right. That's the real reason. I'll get on track with that.
I'll drop all the links to Madeline Wine Folly stuff below. Madeline, that was great. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you.